didn't you say night and said we've done, this will be 21?
Probably. We have Benny Lifts on here for the second time.
Thanks for having me back, mate.
Yeah.
Big coach Ben Cant.
I'm Shannon Green, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Lauren Green.
Hi.
Hello, cameras over there.
It's been a while, we're rusty.
Yeah, we're rusty. It's fine.
No,
Great.
we're
That's all
fine.
right.
Benny knows what he's talking about though.
All right. So welcome back. We had an awesome training session before. We did some delts and triceps, and Benny destroyed our life.
You guys did well.
I feel like my arms were going to blow off my body.
A little bit
but,
of volume for you guys.
Yeah.
It's good. It's cardio.
Yeah, it was.
Cardio.
That's not that bad. I've been doing 15 to 20 rep stuff, but not with triple sets. There's a little bit of extra volume. So it was good.
It didn't kill me as much as 100 back extensions, so I think I'll be alright.
Yeah. My hamstrings are still on fire from that. So, welcome. So today we were going to talk a bit about the game changers, what you did on the other podcast, and then also dive into a bit about bit of the carnivore craze that's going on, and then probably roll a bit more into what people should be doing, getting a variety of foods and micronutrients and why. And you can go all geek out on that if you want to.
Okay.
And then we'll dive into the old favourite, homocysteine.
Never hear the end of this.
Well, you were actually talking it up in the last 2 weeks. Saying
No,
we're going to go
I
into
know,
homocysteine with Shannon because he's been asking. He tried to get me, roping me in on it last time.
I remember we forgot to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, cool. So let's I don't know, where do we start off?
Well, let's have a quick chat about the podcast that you just did with who was
It was on Jungle HQ with Jack and Holly.
Yeah.
So, we basically, we just wanted to discuss the vegan diet, and then at that, point in time, there was quite a few debunking, podcasts or blogs being written, and we didn't want to spend too much time trying to debunk it really, because I straight up didn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
I watched a few minutes of it, and it was really hard to get past it.
Smart man.
10 or 15
we haven't
minutes.
even tried to put it on or anything.
And so we really just tried to put on an episode in which we could just give some value to anyone who really does want to do a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the nutrition impacts that you just want to consider, and take it from there. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, it was really good. I really enjoyed it because it was also, like you said, it was not an attack completely on the documentary or whatever you want to call it. But it also was just very knowledgeable because there's been quite a few people who have come to me who are interested in sort of plant-based diets or whatnot, and I pretty much deter them or refer them out to somebody else because I don't really believe in it. I don't really believe you can get, what my passion is about covering all your bases, getting all your nutrients, for as much from food as what you can without supplementation. But I don't want to learn about how to do it. Not that I don't want to learn about how to do it. It's going to take a lot for me to learn about how to keep somebody healthy on a plant-based diet, whereas I know what I know at the moment and what I believe in and the way that I've had success with everybody else. And I sort of just thought, well, at least it's something good that I can say to people, go and listen to this, because it's not just a matter of I'm going to stop eating meat, I'm going to cut out dairy, I'm going to just go vegan, because people are just getting unhealthy and depleted and the blood work is just plummeting.
Yeah. I mean, we chatted briefly through the week via message. I think you messaged me and asked, should you take someone on? You know what I mean? And I sort of just got back to you with, well, look, I still do.
Yeah.
If they want to do a plant-based diet under the right circumstances, meaning I don't have a hard stance against it. Like, I'm really open to working with, most people. And it really is depending on what they're bringing to the table. But I just like transparency.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just, part of my role to help them distinguish whether or not they are someone who has the potential to do poorly from it.
Yeah.
So whether they're predisposed, whether they have a set of, habits and behaviors that don't lend themselves well to doing well on the plant-based diet. And this kind of talks about, the amount of preparation and cooking methods and raising that nutrition IQ that I really think is necessary to do well on a plant-based diet. To simplify that, it's basically, are you going to put in the frickin' effort and actually learn how to cook something better than just breaking open the white bread and slapping on some, lettuce or something? Because that's what we see. And
that's why I'm so against doing it, because I've had friends, even from before I was a PT, when I was still in finances in the UK, some of my flatmates, whatever, they were like, I'm just going to become a vegetarian. It wasn't like they were eating meat with me. They're like, I'm going to become vegetarian. I'm like, okay. And I don't really know that as much as what I know now and things like that. And then say 6 to 12 months later, they had major health issues because they just didn't they didn't research, okay, well, what do I need if I'm going to eliminate food groups? What do I need to replace that with? So imagine you're bringing to the table like a really suboptimal set of nutrition statuses. Like, so say your B12 is tanked already. And you've already been omnivorous, eating whatever you like. Perhaps you obviously haven't been eating too well, but you don't know that. And then you go into a diet which we know has deficiencies in it, or it has difficulty in achieving the right combinations of a food to, sustain the right levels that you should be consuming, or you don't know how to make those foods digestible, to the point to be able to assimilate what is in it. Then you're going to be in trouble. And that's not even talking about the genetic predispositions to some of the... we're all individuals, and some of us don't do the conversions from plant-based nutrients into what we need, which is animal-based forms of them, too well. So that's 4 layers of potential complexity that you could add on to what we see as coaches. Is there's a big bell curve of people in the middle that we know aren't genuinely willing to put in a lot of effort with certain things. So for the ones on the far right, who they're committed to it, they're very knowledgeable, they've got the time, they've got the lifestyle set up to go ahead and do it really well, good on them. Like, they could really do quite well with the adequate supplementation. The big portion in the middle are going to do it for a certain period of time before something's going to go wrong. And we see it all the time. And then there's, the others that are going to try it for less than a week and realize it's not for them. So...
I mean, like, the biggest thing is people have to realize with these diets is it's not optimal. So what's your goal? Are you an athlete? Do you want to be a subpar athlete? That's really what it comes down to. You know what I mean? Like, what's your reasoning behind doing a vegan or a vegetarian diet? Is it a religious thing? Is it because of like animal cruelty type? Is it an ethical thing? Cool. If it's an ethical thing, there's a lot of other things that you can eat. Like, mollusks don't have a nervous system, and you can get your protein from that. Or could you be a pescatarian? Could you do your own fishing? Is it about farming practices, or just because you love animals? Okay. But what are you doing outside of that too? Do you know what I mean? Are you just like not eating meat and thinking that that's going to change the world and do something else? If you're actually really passionate about the ethical side of things, then just not eating meat is not the answer. You need to go out there and then actually do something about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just making yourself unhealthy, but not really resolving the issue. And then is it a commercial farming practices? Then protest and go out and get people to go and support local farmers and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a million and other ways to sort of get around the issue. But then you've got all these guys who talk about, greenhouse gases and everything. It's like, mate, you've got the latest iPhone. Why don't you have an iPhone fucking 4? Why haven't you kept the same iPhone for 10 years? Do you know what I mean? Is your fucking car electric? Do you know what I mean? Do you leave the lights on in your house? Like, there's a million and other things.
Wasn't it you that said about the Ventolins, the asthma puffers?
I still have it. I still haven't confirmed that. So for anyone who, obviously, there'll be a lot of people who haven't listened to the last podcast I did. It was like a part 1 of this. But I had read something, like, literally the week of that podcast that was... 7 out of 10 of our asthma puffers really contribute a lot to the greenhouse gases, and it was something ridiculous, like 4% when meat consumption contributes 5%. And if we change that around and went for those puffers that didn't emit these greenhouse gas, which is about 30% of them apparently by brand. It didn't seem real, like, I couldn't believe that, and so I don't actually know that. But what you're really talking about, and this is something we didn't get into in the last podcast, is the ethical and political contributions to this discussion. Okay, we talked about the the health and nutrition side of things, because that's our industry.
Yeah.
Okay, that's our passion. But that whole other side of it, with the political and ethical contributions to it, is where it's very hard to have this discussion in isolation, because people bring so much passion, emotion, and ideology to the discussion that it doesn't really stay within one realm. Okay, and I said this, it's like having a discussion sometimes with someone who's very passionately plant-based is like having a boxing match where they come at you from one angle and we resolve this, and then we just come at it from another angle, and it's very hard for that to ever finish. It's just a discussion that goes on. But there is more on that I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the views of these plant-based people. So, so even from the ethical component of like what we do to grow these annuals, these crops like soy and corn, the destruction to the local ecology is massive, and 100%. So it's a whole nother discussion. And I just have a very different viewpoint that if I don't support commercial farming practices. I think that they could be improved drastically. Drastically. I've never said anything but that. But in saying that you can't then take that and say, well, I'm going to become a vegan, okay? Because there's other ways. And this is when, like, you vote with your money and, whatever else you choose to do. And part of that for me has always been sourcing meat from, like, an ethical butcher where they've got full transparency and they are very passionate and are connected with local farmers that are doing their part for the right thing, and their contribution to the environment is like they're building topsoil. They have really good setups in which the damage is less. So a whole other part of the discussion.
And then a part of that is then, like, you can eat seafood. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're not if you're not agreeing with the commercial farming practices, there's seafood, you know what I mean? You get line caught fish, you know what I mean? You can eat all your clams and all that sort of stuff. There's plenty of ethical and seafood's awesome. I mean, a lot of people are not putting seafood in their diet. I don't eat seafood, and it's like, what? You don't eat any seafood? There's a lot of different types of seafood out there. People need to experiment with a bit more things and
100%, and
more wider view on food.
And even with you'll know if you listen to anything that I talk about nutrition, I'm a big fan of seafood. But still, I recognise the damage that a lot of commercial fishing practices can do for our oceans with depletion as well. I recognise that, and I think it's a very valid component to what we should be thinking about for future generations. But again, don't take that problem and then think that the solution is to demonize like a food group out of our diet that contributes a huge amount of nutrition. And it's like you sort of said, like, even like the farming of oysters is such a good practice in terms of the ecology on the environment, and, we go get oysters as often as we can because we know the micronutrition in them. But, that's just one example of something. And that sort of begs to sort of border on the, what you were talking about with the ethical component about, the whole lack of a nervous system and where do you sit on that? So, where I really wanted to eventually get the discussion to, because this is what I get a lot. Of the question I get a lot is, look, I want to be mainly plant-based, but what do you think I could do? What are the animal sources that you think I could put in there to cover my bases, to give me the insurance to, keep myself healthy and repleted with, my nutrition and not run into potential deficiencies and poor health outcomes. And that's what I spend a lot of time, on my social media and, talking events, kind of trying to discuss these foods that are so nutrient dense, because that's really where we're going with this.
I mean, the other side of the thing is too, like, you get your general population people or people who think they eat good but they don't really, and that's that you're trying to demonise a whole food group, but you haven't even looked at your diet. Like, the protein sources you're trying to obtain are very poor. You've got lunch meats in there, you've got shit quality beef, you got once a day, you're eating chips, you're eating cakes. Like, you don't have a diet that's good. Like, you're not going to feel good anyway. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you should start the process of maybe taking the shit out of your diet and putting some real food into the diet as well. That might be a good start before just trying to go and cut out a whole food group.
Unfortunately, like most nutrition tribes, really involve the elimination of a whole food group or something along those lines. And I've discussed this a few times because in my experience, like what I see when people take that approach is that it really simplifies things. And for a whatever period of time, I'll kind of err on the side of like a shorter period of time, people tend to feel better because they cut out rubbish because they've got certainty about what should be at home in the pantry and the fridge. So if you go vegan, guess what? You just went to the pantry, the freezer, the fridge, and eliminated all the a lot of this. You know, just you just went through the same thing. If you went carnivore, you kind of went this, and so. Having that certainty about like what you're going to eat now, that breeds this compliance. Do you know what I mean? So that, and we know that compliance is really the main thing over the long run, which we see with results. Okay, absolutely. So unfortunately, as we know, like not everyone's going to do well off the diets that they choose. But I think that's one of the components of why people feel better initially, and then obviously we see problems later. Yeah, and
I see a lot of people when they switch to going vegetarian or vegan or whatever is they never had any vegetables in their diet to begin with. And then they go to a diet where they're forced to eat a lot of vegetables and say, well, you're getting some micronutrients that you weren't getting before, getting some fibre, so now you're starting to become regular.
Yep.
And then that's a good thing, but then over time, then the other side of the stuff, you're not getting that meat portion in your diet, and then your body ends up getting depleted. Again, your body's a survival mechanism. It's going to try and survive at all costs. So it's going to drag you through till you're on the bare bones of your ass, and then you're going to start feeling shit. So it's not the fact, it's not what you do now, it's 6 months down the track. Those things are going to impact you. You're not going to know what's going wrong straight away. It's not like you take an apple out of your diet and then 3 weeks later you feel terrible. You might not feel terrible for 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years. Again, everyone's different. Some people are just like, it's like I always use the example of an old guy I used to work with. He was 70. He'd start in the morning. He'd go through pack of 50 cigarettes by lunchtime, and then he'd start on the rollies. This bloke would cough and hack up like all day. Like he'd be working with this guy and he'd just be constantly chain smoking. The bloke's still going now. He's still working. He's like, he's close to 90 and he still smokes like that. And he smoked like that his whole life. Some people are just anomalies, but do you know what I mean? Like people don't take that into consideration too when they look at, again, like the game changers would be the biggest thing. Like you're talking about that Olympic weightlifter, he was probably going to be great regardless of his diet, whether he was carnivore, whether he ate burgers every day. Do you know what I mean? Like there's anomalies to the situation. You can't just cherry pick one person and then go, that's what I should do. I mean, like in bodybuilding, like obviously Phil Heath is the example, but Phil Heath trains like this. But you're not Phil Heath.
So there's two things that I would say to that. One is it's a pretty clear example of us falling for the confirmation of our own bias. Okay, which we do in everything. Like training is a perfect example of that. You know, you go to the gym, you feel amazing, and whatever methodology you used, you will start telling people about, oh, you should do this class, or you should do this form of weightlifting, or you should do endurance running because that's what I did and I feel so much better. So the difference with nutrition is that it's like a religion these days. People have got nothing else to argue and debate about. So nutrition just seems that people just take it to the next level. Okay, and most of us just shake our heads at it, but we have to continually explain it to the general public and our clients. The second thing, and this comes back to what you just said then about the game changers and the weightlifter or performance in general, and if I can loop back to what you really said right at the start of the podcast in terms of optimal for performance. The thing is that, I was having a discussion with one of my mates who's in Dubai at the moment, and he trains a lot of weightlifters, but he was sort of saying, Benny, what about all these MMA guys and these fighters that come from like poverty-stricken countries and they're eating nothing, mate? Like, how does your whole nutrient density fit into that equation? And I just laughed and I said, mate, I'm not going to sit here and actually defend nutrition in that regards to performance, because I don't have to wave that flag. You would think I would want to, because my ideology is like good nutrition, but I actually know that like you can eat chicken nuggets and be the fastest man on earth. If you just pick the right parents. So I have seen the craziest diets for athletes. Whether it's chicken nuggets, whether it's a vegan diet, it doesn't matter to me. They could literally eat crap. And if you're really good, and if you can't, like maybe some of these environmental factors, like coming from a really rough upbringing and no money. That's the kind of stuff that drives athletes. That's what we use every session to become successful. So the whole movie to me is just like, meh. Like, I don't care. Like, you can be successful really on any given nutrition strategy for whatever period of time if you have that all of those contributing factors coming together in the perfect storm, which we see in some amazing athletes across multiple disciplines worldwide. You know? So
there's also got to play a part in the belief of it all. It's like you're what you believe, like you know what you believe you can achieve, sort of thing. Like if people are like, I'm following this and my performance is going to be better, and there's that whole mindset thing. Like, you know, we're talking about, say, maybe you don't know the damage that you're going to do 3 years from now, but people are like, I'm doing this and it's going to make me feel amazing, and they believe in it so hard that then they start to feel amazing.
Yes.
And it's exactly the same with the clients in the reverse who are like, I'm so fat, I'm never going to get results. I've been eating really healthy, I still look shit, like I still look flabby. Well, and so you've got to change your mindset to be able to even get the momentum of starting to get something on track for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and you know, that's where I'm the first to admit. I think, well, definitely in my experience, because it's just the type of discussions that come to me from other coaches, and that is that they want to know the physiological reasons behind maybe why someone feels so amazing on a whatever diet that they've chosen or whatever. And I'm like, to be honest with you, I think a lot of it's a psychological side of things.
Yeah, psychology.
Because, you know, whether it comes back to that certainty and knowing, or a framework or rules, or I don't eat carbs, or whatever it is, I think that lends itself to just really creating a set of behaviors and habits that you carry out for success. Yeah. So
first off, you eliminate like high inflammation foods, you are going to feel better. Or you don't eat any veggies and then you start to eat veggies and you are going to feel better. And then you've got buy-in right from the beginning. And you're like, cool, I'll just take the momentum of that. And then you get advice to give to everybody else who doesn't follow what you do. Society.
But then we've got the other side of the equation, and we've got the people that sit on the other side of the fence. We've got this carnivore people, so it's all about meat. We don't need to eat vegetables. Vegetables have lectins in them and all this other stuff and anti-nutrients, and we're going to die if we keep eating vegetables, yet we've survived how many years of eating plants? Thousands of years. And the same for the vegetarian side. Again, how many thousands of years have we survived eating meat? You know what I mean? And I learned in primary school I was an omnivore. Now physiology hasn't changed. Do you know what I mean? So we've got speak a bit about on the carnivore side, and what do you see as far as the problems being on that side of the fence? I know, like, a lot of people will jump into it because they think it's it might be a cause for like an extreme elimination diet if you're having some digestive issues or whatever, but I mean, there's also got to be some sort of framework and a path. That's not, you don't just go there and then you eliminate everything and then you stop. It's like, my knee hurts from squatting and doing this and doing that, so I'm only going to do lunges. So what do you just stop doing every other exercise and stay with lunges for the rest of your life? There's no progression to turn yourself back into being able to do those other exercises. So you should be able to turn yourself back into eating those other foods. Like, the digestive system and the body is an adaptive organism too, so that like, it's just because your digestion's upset doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way forever. Or if you've got a food intolerance, doesn't necessarily mean that food intolerance is going to be there forever either.
I mean, so first of all, take everything we just said up until this point on a vegan diet, and it pretty much applies. So everything we just said about, hey, now I have a really easy framework for my mind in regards to nutrition that takes a lot of stress away from me, because I have anxiety and stress around what food combinations or what I'm going to put on my meals, and apply it to this discussion. Okay. That's what I would do, first of all, just in regards to the carnivore diet. From there, I think you hit the nail on the head where, as far as I can see, it seems that the genesis of it seems to revolve, at the moment at least, a lot around the elimination aspect with regard to people with GI issues. And I'm like, if someone has a relief of a chronic disease, you know, whether it's a gastrointestinal issue or whatever, and they find something that resolves it after so many failed attempts, I'm the first to sit there and acknowledge, like, okay, what is it that's worked? Like, let's tease out how this process has eventuated in the success that you've got. You've got to respect that.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, the trouble you're going to run into is that the short-term resolution may end up in different long-term issues. Just like a vegan diet, just like a ketogenic diet. And I think it's John Berardi from a Precision Nutrition who, a long time ago, I'm going to butcher this, sorry, John, but I think he said something like, there's no diet that works for everyone forever, all the time, okay? Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to remember is that your body now and your body 12 months from now may require like a different contribution of nutrients and food groups that you choose because of whatever you're doing. What's your output, what's your stress, like what's happened over that 12 months.
You're exposed to.
Exactly.
Like, there's your environment and you've got mold in your house.
There are so many things so many variables that come into play here and we hear it all the time because people go, oh, I did this and I felt amazing, and then I fell off the bandwagon for a year or two, and then when I got back on, I tried to pick it up with my initial strategy, and I just didn't get the same result again. Yeah. Okay, and it's because potentially things have changed. Yeah. So I think that it is important to understand that some people are going to have got a modicum of success with the resolution of whatever chronic disease or illness that they've had, and to respect that. But you're right. Some of the things from a plant-based diet are very beneficial, and they're all of a sudden going to be missing. Fiber being the obvious one. It's harder to get things like basic vitamins like vitamin C, for instance. And there's all kind of hypotheses and arguments that carnivore proponents are making as to, well, we're not seeing scurvy, or I've been doing carnivore for 25 years and I'm still kicking like your mate, or good mate doing 50 cigarettes. And it's like, as much as your N equal 1 is interesting, don't then go trying to apply that to a population, and go advising that everyone's going to get the same result you did, because it's not going to happen. So that's important. I
mean, like on that vitamin C thing, but then you got other stuff that vitamin C plays a role in with the ceruloplasm and the vitamin A and all that sort of stuff. So in that context too, that's going to become an issue somewhere down the line as well. Yeah,
and so let's just think about some of the things for a second that are actually in the carnivore diet. Okay. We know, first of all, people are going to be getting probably a lot more protein than they were consuming, unless they were already on a high protein omnivorous diet. That could be, supplying them with the amino acids to assist with neurotransmitter production, helping them make their dopamine and their serotonin and those kind of things. That could be contributing to part of the reason that they're feeling better, cognition is better, all those kind of things. But in excess, okay, so if we were take methionine, another amino acid that, is part of the methylation cycle, in excess, high methionine diets, we've shown studies in which you do want to take that into consideration that some people aren't going to do so well with that, and potential health conditions like cancer, for instance, in which they're targeting some of the research, perhaps lower methionine intakes so that we don't promote growth and proliferation. So the body has inbuilt systems to deal with, say, a high methionine intake or, a higher saturated fat intake or whatever, but perhaps your systems don't work so well. Okay? You don't really know that unless you've done some homework, or potentially you're tracking yourself with, blood tests, or, looking into what you're bringing to the table and following yourself with signs and symptoms. Okay? So it's just important to recognize some of those things that are high saturated fat, lots of protein. Whilst many of us might not have any issues with them, some people fall on the end of the bell curve where they may see poor lipids and, cholesterol issues, for instance. So, yeah.
And then, but then obviously, like you get a lot of these carnivore guys will just be like, they'll bring it down to like they've got one cut of steak that they feel the best on, and it's like, okay, now we're getting into some hocus pocus magic. You're telling me that whole animal, the fibers that are in his rump upset your stomach now. Is that what you're trying to tell me? You do best on only ribeyes. And there's a few like crazy things like that, but then also too, like you just you're just eating ribeyes, like you're missing out on so many other things, you know what I mean? Like, okay, if you're doing carnivore and you're getting a whole animal and you're doing everything, you're eating the intestines, you're going through the heart, the lungs, the whole shit and everything. Yeah, okay, like you.
But who is doing that though?
Yeah.
That's because you're leading me to where I wanted to go to, which was if you're gonna do carnivore, you're gonna want to consider eating nose to tail.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Not just eating.
A lot of people talk about doing nose to tail carnivore, but I don't think they really do nose to tail.
Because again, we get back to the same conversation about if you're going to take on a vegan diet, you want to raise your nutrition IQ, meaning you got to know the right combinations, the right cooking methods, and have the right passion and time to prepare these foods so that you're covering your bases. The exact same argument is for the carnivore diet in that I think so let's like the 80% of people that we're going to deal with, most of them are probably going to go for the leaner cuts of meat that they've already got a bias towards maybe anyway. And, I like my eye fillet. That's my go-to. So they're going to probably go for those things. And we, again, could end up with issues. Well, perhaps we're not taking in enough folate. Perhaps our potassium's a little bit low. Perhaps we're not going and getting calcium. Those are the things that I think people have to really take into consideration if they want to do a carnivore diet.
Get enough glycine and stuff like that.
Well, yeah,
collagen.
Exactly. Yeah. So glycine is part of the component that balances out the methionine in the diet. So if you're doing, like, let's say, a very high red meat, lean meat diet, it's going to be very high in methionine. Yeah. If you want to balance out and help that system in the body that deals with high methionine, it's glycine. Yeah. Now, glycine is from the collagenous cuts, the bone broths. So how many carnivores are doing that? Okay, so again, it's a layer of complexity that could be done. Maybe not for everyone, maybe not forever. Yeah. But again, we're coming back to an ideology here in a lot of circumstances where people want to take one thing and go, "Hey, this is the diet for me, forever."
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and then we could circle back on that and go back to the vegan and the ethical thing and the farming and everything, and it's like, if you really want to do something for farming, buy a whole animal and eat that whole animal. Don't just buy a cut, you know what I mean? Do that whole animal justice. Buy a whole chicken. Don't just buy chicken breasts. Like, you're just adding to the wastage, you know what I mean? You actually want to do something that's actually going to make an impact. Yeah. Just don't waste food. Yeah. That's a massive, it could be a massive thing, especially if you go on then again the side of dumping waste and the gases and stuff that have accumulated from food waste and people straight into rubbish and it not going into compost and stuff like that. It has a massive impact as well. So
exactly, and this comes back to something that I side. Part of my value system is exactly what you're saying. It's about making the most of everything and being grateful for the animal's life that's been taken so that you can live, so that you can eat. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about having grass-fed and finished. Yeah. You don't even have to get into this argument about, grains are inflammatory or great. Guess what? The figures that get thrown around mainly by proponents of a plant-based diet about the comparison of how much water it takes to grow a pound of beef versus a pound of rice. Yeah. They use the figures that contribute from the grain-fed cows. Which, because what have you got to do? You've got to grow all the grains. Then you've got to give them to the cow. Why don't we just let Mother Nature do what she's been doing for billions of years and let the cows eat the freaking grass? Yeah. Right? Yeah. So if you actually do those numbers, it brings them back down to parallel. Yeah. And that argument, actually from if you want to call it like a climate argument, for instance, is basically null and void. Yeah. Okay? The bigger question is how do we take a juggernaut of an industry that is commercial farming practices and really start to make a big enough dent by looking at these local small farmers that are, ecologically friendly. Yeah.
Cool. And then the other part of it is people when they're switching to a vegan diet or whatever. I eat a lot of I feel like I eat a lot of meat, and it's well, hang on. When I prescribe a diet to someone, actually is not. If you weigh the food content, the protein content is the whole meat content of what you're eating per day is not that high.
Yeah.
So generally, you're going to give someone a kilo and a half of vegetables and potatoes, stuff in their potatoes, fruit and stuff like that today, so they can hit their trace micronutrients, get enough fibre in their diet. And then how much meat are you going to give that person? 500-600 grams a day? Like, you're talking triple the amount in weight in vegetables, the amount of meat you're eating. So you're not really eating a lot of meat. Actually, if your diet is balanced and healthy, you're actually eating a lot of vegetables. It's like a vegetarian diet supplemented with meat.
Yeah.
Protein and seafood.
Yeah, which is along the lines of something that's way too sensible to to write a book about.
Well, that's what we said.
I don't know how we're going to make money off that, guys.
We joked about we were going to advertise it. This podcast, we reveal the perfect diet for absolutely everyone. So it's a vegetarian diet with meat and seafood.
Yeah. I like it. Give it that title.
Yeah, but that's a lot of thing that people don't realise. It's like, you take a look at your diet, put it all on the table, and actually have a look at what you eat within that week as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if people actually, like, without tracking, if you bought everything that you ate that week and stuck it on the table, look at it and seriously think about it. It's the best way to change diet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, how much shit are you actually eating? Like, people talking about, I don't know what diet to do. It's like, yes, you do. Everyone knows. But you know what's the simplest thing? Just don't eat shit out of a packet.
But that's the same for my meal plans that I give to people. I'm like, okay, here's your options for your protein sources, your carb sources, your fat sources, and these are all the veggies that you can, I want to, like 150 grams minimum per meal, but you can go over on these things if you want to. Like, there's no real limit, but you have to get at least 150 grams per meal. So then there's always been someone who's like, they've tracked their food for a week, I go back and look, I'm like, you've eaten ham at every meal. You came to me for weight loss. It's on the list. Do you, as an adult with children, would you give your children ham at every meal? Like a processed meat? Like, you know, like, it's like, hang on a minute. And you know you've come to me because you want to lose weight. What were you eating before? Ham. Like, it's like, yes, it's on the list. So now I have grey areas on my list. Okay, this is a once or twice a week food.
Yeah.
You're not once or twice a day or something like that. But people, it's not exotic enough to say, eat all veggies, fruits and like plants, and include some healthy meats. Or like, it's not buzzword enough.
Look, I think there is a small amount of individuals that get prescribed a diet, maybe from fitness professionals, that is a little bit too high protein to start with because they've been coming from really low protein.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a big deal out of that because I don't think it's that many people.
Yeah.
I think that there's probably a little bit of kickback from many clients, but it's probably because they're just used to eating a lot of junk food.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's just the uncomfortableness of that shift. But nonetheless, there's probably a few there that maybe some trainers are a little bit overzealous and have prescribed 2.5, 2.6 grams per kilo of body weight, where we should have just done a little bit more due diligence and gone, you know what, I'm going to start, this female client on 1.6 grams and just kind of ease her into it.
Yeah.
Now, to hit on what Lauren's saying is that, each of us as a coach working with nutrition has to, first of all, look at, well, how are we going to service our clients? Do you have one way or the highway, or do you have multiple ways of helping someone with their nutrition? So do you deal with calories? Do you deal with portions? Do you, have good foods, bad foods? Whatever it is, so many ways work, and you can make an argument for many of them, and it's all about context. Yeah. Okay. So what does the client really need for that? Yeah. And this, to kind of loop this back in with the discussion on elimination diets or vegan, carnivore, everything else. Yeah. Some people abstain well, and some people moderate themselves well. Okay. So people that moderate themselves well do really well with flexible diets.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they can eat. Let's use an 80-20 rule because it's easy for all of the audience to understand. So if they were having 50 meals or 40 meals a week or something like that, and 36 of them were to the meal plan, maybe there's an option for 4 of them to be a little bit off, and they can, for them, that's a celebration of hey, I've worked really hard this week. I have stuck to all the things I said I was going to, and I really appreciate this little reward. And psychologically, what that's enabled me to do is keep going on this plan. So what do you have? You have consistency.
Yeah.
So moderators will do well from that. Abstainers are just more drawn to completely staying away from things. So when you hear, I'm an all or nothing person, I'm 0 or I'm 100, okay, they're people that tend to look for abstinence, okay, because they know that once they open the Tim Tams, they can't stop, okay? So they know, okay, we'll get them out later. Again, so to bring this to the elimination diets, who do we think is going to be more drawn to, and I'm just throwing this out there, I don't have anything to back this up, but who's going to be more likely to be drawn to one of those diets? I would think an abstinence type person. Those diets lend themselves well to being enticing. Wow, that's a set of boundaries, rules. This is who I am. Yeah. So.
And then they have the buy-in. Oh, no, and then you have that. I'm in that tribe.
And then you have the
That's
compliance.
my tribe, and I've got a lot of people who support it. And these are not allowed. These are on my no list.
That's right. But
then they get results because they have a no list.
Yes, that's exactly right. And what do you have again? You have compliance. So success.
And speaking about if it fits your macros, and that's a whole nother ballpark that a lot of people jump on that bandwagon. And as you said, 80-20, it's generally not 80-20. Most of the stuff you see in people post is it's 80% fitting the macros and 20% actually real food. But it's honestly is people think, I hit my macros on. It's like, cool, macros are one part. Calories are most important, making sure you get your protein in. But there's this thing called micronutrients from fruits and vegetables and real foods, you know what I mean, that you're missing out on. Like, and that's probably the biggest place where people stuff up. If it fits your macros, it's like, cool. It's like, if you've had, like, you've got a diet, strict diet, you're trying to stick to it, again, like, it's got to be strict, it's got to be consistent. Like, a lot of these IFMY guys bash, like, a traditional bodybuilding diet with 5 foods or 9 foods or whatever. But you know what the beauty of that is? You know what you're doing each day. Every day is the fucking same. And if you're doing a bodybuilding show, and it's consistency that you can measure and you can change the values. Obviously, there's going to be some nutrient deficiencies associated with that. You can get better and make that better. But constantly varying the foods that are coming in, those numbers that are on the packages are not exactly what's in the food. You're going to get a good ballpark. It's going to be a good maintenance diet, but constantly varying those. I'll have that cereal because on the packet says that'll fit my macros, and I'll have this because I said it'll fit my macros. And Subway said this, but you didn't know the bloke put twice as much sauce on.
And when you're like, why do you have to have so much syrup in your coffee? Oh, it's only because I needed to get my carbs up in that meal.
So that's interesting, actually. I like that because that's a vulnerability of the flexible dieting method that I haven't really considered before, and I'll probably steal it and use it, okay? Because I like it, because you're right, the more randomness we have and the more diversity of food types and food sources, that exposes, generally speaking, to a larger margin of error.
Because like food labels are up. I think was it 30% in variance? I've even heard.
I don't know.
50% variance.
I'm gonna have to look into this because I just it's not something that I've actually spent any time looking into. But what you say makes a lot of sense to me. But like again, to bring it full circle, I think one of the things I see here is, again, abstinence or moderation. What do you like? The thing that I've always said, which, again, I'm still going to steal yours, I like it, but is that when people have a plan, I feel like when maybe a client delegates this to the coach, they can focus their energy and resources and everything into other aspects of their life, because they're not overthinking and decision making. Okay, that goes into designing their meal plans, or perhaps they get stressed out by getting to the end of the day and plugging things in. Okay, whereas again, you take maybe a moderator and they actually enjoy that process.
They love that part.
So again, it's not.
This
is the thing. It's not one size fits all. But perhaps the conversation really should be geared towards what are the vulnerabilities of each way, and then trying to find the best solution for the individual.
Everything's got its flaws.
That's exactly right.
But on that, like when you talk about like the people that are not interested, like food tracking stresses them out or whatever. But it's like, unless you start to learn to track food or learn what is actually in foods, you're going to struggle and you're going to be frustrated like this for the rest of your life. Your dieting life is not necessarily going to be successful, because you're either going to go stick to like chicken, broccoli and rice or whatever, and end up with a nutrient deficiency and not feeling so great, but you'll get lean, and then you're just going to blow out and bounce back, or you're just never going to be able to be successful because you don't know what's going wrong. You actually don't know what's in the food. It's like, if you never budget your bank account, or you never look at your credit card, you just hand your credit card out and spend, like, how do you know what's going on? Like, most people don't understand what's in 100 grams of chicken, what's in 100 grams of beef, how much protein and fat is in an egg, what's in a piece of bread, what's in pasta. Like, all these things matter. Like, you should know, like you said, like with the vegetarian trying to get more food knowledge, people just need basic food knowledge.
Yeah.
This is what addressed where we spoke the other week, and we're saying, like, it needs to be started in schools. Like, if everyone was taught basic nutrition in schools, we wouldn't have half of these bullshit documentaries and half of these issues going on, and weight issues, because people would understand what's in food, they'd understand the concepts, they just don't know.
Yeah. And look,
that sometimes, I don't know if they just don't want to know either. Do you know what I mean? Like, hand me the best diet. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
So this was information that was passed down, within the family structure up until recent decades.
Yeah.
And then what's happened is there's been no great, whether it's within the education space, like you're talking about, like primary school, and that there's been nowhere that's picked it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have left is, well, at least now what we have is the internet. Yeah. Okay. Which, I mean,
which is confusing everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who knows where to start there? I mean, one of the things that I always get asked is, who should I follow? What should I read? What are the best resources? Because people are fed up. They're like, oh my, and the news is the worst.
Yeah.
They'll present both sides of the story deliberately to confuse you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah. Like, with people just don't know. And one of I think when I'm talking to, like, nutrition basics, general population people, it's like, listen, diversity gives you the insurance, okay? Whereas if you just at least eat a range of different foods, again, you're probably going to minimize the risk of nutrient deficiencies by sheer fact of, like, trying to cover as many bases as possible. Now, inherently, there's a little bit of vulnerability in that, and it comes along in the form of, when we have more food types, there's actually a little bit more risk of perhaps overeating if you're not tracking, say, using one of the methods that we'll talk about before with Lauren, like whether it's portion control or calorie control, and people are just eating good foods, which is something that a lot of health professionals, that's their the way that they work with clients. Hey, I just have this thing, you just eat good foods. Yeah. Right? But perhaps, again, like, so there's just certain environmental situations or food combinations that lend themselves to overeating still. And one of the weird ones is, it's as much as diversity is great, because I'm talking about the insurance of nutrient density, it's something that a vulnerability within that might be the potential to overconsume a few things as well. Yeah. Because, again, you guys know what it's like. Like, you've gone out to a restaurant, you've had your salad, your pasta, but then, you can always eat the dessert that comes out, even if you were so full, because, again, it's
because of the second stomach.
Second stomach rule, that's right. So,
Yeah, but it's like, but then again, it comes back to having that food knowledge. If you have that food knowledge, you can slowly start to add it up in your head. Like, and it's not that hard. Like, recently, I just had one of the guys at the gym. He came to me and he asked me. He's like, I'm eating well now. I'm like getting my 5 meals in, and I'm training hard. And like, what supplement should I be taking? And I'm like, tell me what you're eating. Yeah. So he takes me through his food, and I'm like, you need more protein at breakfast, you need more protein in your afternoon meal. And I said, bring that vegetable content up a little bit. They're like, what supplements? Just do that. Yeah. Gone away for 4 weeks, looks completely different. You know what I mean? Just such a small change. And then I'm like, start tracking the food too, so then you can start to see if you want to change something, what it's done. And I tried to get him to track a couple of years ago, and he wouldn't do it. Yeah. But now he's got more vested interest in changing his body, and he's like, all right, start doing it. He goes, that's awesome. He goes, I didn't realise this was in this and this was in this. And he goes, now if I want to get something, I know I can go, oh, well, that's roughly got that much protein, so I'll grab one of them and I'll grab one of them. Like, it's not hard.
Yeah. It's not hard when you're at the right point to be open to it.
Once you get that knowledge, but you've just got to dig in and get that knowledge.
Yeah. And again, I think if we brought it back to a better education of our kids, they're kids. They would love to learn about this stuff.
Yeah.
I think as adults, we've just given, like a lot of them have given up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to think about this. That's what I'm paying you for. You figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but again, like I agree with you. I mean, in the education space, that's my bias is I want you to learn.
Yeah.
And it goes to what you're saying is like, just elevating that nutrition IQ, having an understanding of how food works, because somehow you've got yourself to a position in life with either you're overweight or you're unhealthy. And guess what? No one's going to help you. You've got to help yourself.
Yeah.
You did this, take responsibility,
Yeah.
And what are you going to do about it? Yeah. Okay. So if you were in any other aspect of life, most people would realize if they were down and out with finance or whatever it is, they would realize, well, I'm going to go do something here and I got to go learn a skill so someone can employ me. Yeah. But again, nutrition's just a religion and I don't know, people feel like it's a privilege.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's like a lot of people come in gung-ho, I want to change my body, this and that. It's like, it's cool. Like, you want to get a promotion at work, you got to work for it. Like, it's not going to come. You can't just rock up to a gym or get an online trainer and get a program and say, hand me a diet on a piece of paper, and then that's going to magically change things.
Yeah.
They've got to start to realise that there's a lot of work. And if you've been unhealthy for 10 years and you've been overweight for 10 years, you're going to change it in 6-12 weeks. It's going to take you years to undo that process.
Like what you're opening up here is something that I've seen happen over the last 15 years. And that is since we've had social media, okay, and basically that insight into someone else's life.
Yeah.
Well, the sliver of the well, what it is, right? Prior to that time, when I was in gyms, and someone who was really unfit and unhealthy and, knew that they were a beginner, had very little expectations of looking like the guy that has the body of a god.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were like, man, he's been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
So what did we see? Well, if you were around back then, what you saw was people realizing, well, it's not a 12-week challenge that's going to get me there.
Yeah.
What do we have now since social media, though, right? We have
5-week challenges.
we do. We have all of these ways for people to get involved in this process, and everyone fighting for your attention on it. Okay, and to go back to what you're saying about the flexible dieting, I'll tell you something right now, because maybe one person out here needs to hear this. Most of these people that you see with a really good body that put up a cheat meal table of like what The Rock does, they don't do that. They post that up, but more often than not, they don't do it. Yeah. Okay, because I can tell you, because I have clients, I got one this morning, go, hey bro, just to let you know I didn't eat that. The thing you saw in my Instagram story when I was on holiday, I didn't actually eat that. I just posted it, right? So I think perhaps like normal people need to hear that, is that some of the people that they look to, social media is just a thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, people do things like that. It's an interesting thing. It might be a joke. Maybe they want to make it look real. Don't fall for what someone else is doing and compare ourselves to that. And I think that's what we've really seen over the last 15 years is people setting the expectation that they can look like a body they see on a magazine front without having the set of values, behaviors, time, investment that said person has. That's changed in 15 years.
100%. I remember when I first started training, and one of the bodybuilders that was like one of my first sort of introductions to the gym, and I was like, I want to this is how I want to look. I was thinking like maybe 95 kilos, 10% body fat ish. And I started out when I was training, I was 55 kilos, and he goes, to get any decent looking physique, your physique wants to look decent, he goes, 10 years. Minimum. He goes, you train for 10 years, 4 or 5 days a week, eat 4 to 5 meals a day, and you do that for 10 years straight, your body will look good.
Did he have a 10-year package? Hey? Did you sign up for the 10 years?
that was legit, and and I actually over the years, the first early years, I've had a few different people that weren't associated with it say pretty much exactly the same thing along the same lines, and that was your perception. You're like, okay, if I want to look like that, I'm going to train harder for the next fucking 9 years.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I could keep going on about this because it's funny, but I think we've said our point is that, things have changed. It's important for people to probably realise that. And I think a lot of people do have problems with their...
Perceptions change, but physiology hasn't, guys.
Yeah, it's like, I think a lot of people, again, and I had this discussion with some of my clients about protecting your space with something like social media.
Yeah.
You're going to protect what's going on in your mind. That's really what I'm talking about. And for a lot of people, especially in the fitness and health industry, they spend a lot of time on social media. So whether it is being inspired by, maybe you've just had a bub and, you see a fitness woman, mother who's, doing her comeback or whatever it is, and you're getting some insights with that. And, or maybe you're trying to follow mentors and educators, you know what I mean? But inevitably, there's a feed, and a lot of things are going to come across that feed. And basically, you're changing the amount of things that you're seeing that are contributing to, how you're feeling inside.
Yeah.
And if you're not feeling good by what you're seeing, protect your space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just think that's really important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dive into the big bomb.
The big bomb.
Homocysteine.
Benny was trying to get away with it again this time.
Mate. I thought we were doing the podcast tomorrow.
So homocysteine.
Yeah.
So generally, it's a hard blood test to get your doctors to do a lot of the time, because they don't. A lot of them don't understand it. They don't understand the ranges. Like even my doctor said, he goes, I don't know what the range is for that. He goes, I said, it's all right. I know what the range is. You know what I mean? But he's like, he goes, I don't know if that range is good or not.
But how good is that we have a doctor who will honestly admit that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
and he was like,
great.
okay, well, I'll still test it, but I don't know how to give you advice on it.
That's
very rare.
Yeah.
Look, that's the kind of relationship you wish you could have with your, with your physician.
Yeah, and I mean, I go to my doctor, get my blood test, and then I take him to a guy to interpret them.
Yep.
I mean, I can interpret most of them myself, but I'll take them to him and get a second eye over another guy who's switched on with that sort of stuff, understands it from a anti-aging perspective and a health perspective more than anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't have access to that sort of stuff. But
and I have you.
Yeah. But in saying that, homocysteine, the range that you generally see on some blood tests is like 10 to 15. I tend to think it's probably a bit on the too high end of what homocysteine should be. And what are your thoughts on that? And then why should we be testing homocysteine, and what other biomarkers should we be looking at in conjunction with the homocysteine that's going to set off red flags?
Yeah.
Well, first you should talk about what homocysteine is for some of the listeners.
Yeah. Let's kind of wind it back a little bit and not jump off some of the recent discussions that I've put out there with other people or on the social media. So, look, there are certain basic tests that your doctors, usually happy to run, once a year or whatever their practice is. Like a full blood count, and they might check in on your liver and kidneys, maybe your lipids, cholesterol, vitamin D, maybe.
That's hard to get. You don't need that.
Look, so then you get into the realm of asking for potentially for other markers, which the physician really wants to see a reason to do so.
Yeah.
Okay, and these could be things like homocysteine. It could be C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker. It could be commonly, I think, in the fitness industry, we deal a lot with thyroid. Yeah. So like a more extended thyroid panel than TSH.
TSH. So reverse T3.
Yeah. I kind of categorize how hard they are in terms of, as in to get from the doctor. Like how many times do we have to bloody go back? Yeah. But these other markers can be very, very insightful to your health and your goals. So for thyroid, for instance, actually knowing your T4 and T3, those thyroid hormones, rather than the thyroid stimulating hormone, which is just the hormone telling the thyroid what to do. Knowing the actual levels of those hormones is very useful information, but unfortunately the way that the system is set up, it's just not common practice to go ahead and test that first. Okay, homocysteine is a little bit different again in that what we see with a lot of physicians is it's a little bit out of their scope of knowledge even. Many have admitted to my clients going, I don't know what that is. I wouldn't know what to tell you, so I'm not going to run it.
Yeah.
Okay. So to set the scene, to bring it to homocysteine, while we were talking about this recently was we were talking about game changers. We were talking about the vegan diet, and we got talking about common nutrients and lab markers or even supplementation that might be useful if you choose to go plant-based only or mainly plant-based.
Yeah.
And some of the big ones are things like vitamin B12.
Yeah.
Okay. So B12 is very important for a lot of neurological things in the body. It's very important for our methylation as well, which turns genes off and on and helps us synthesize some really cool things.
So I got my blood work done and my B12's in range.
Yeah, oh God, okay. Yes, that's right. So, look, B12 is deficient in a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
Okay, no one should be arguing that. That's just the way it is. So you're going to need to supplement. Yeah. If you were going to do a B12 test, the first one that will probably get done is a Serum B12. Okay, Serum B12 here in Australia, sorry, I don't really know the reference ranges overseas, but the reference range might be somewhere from 200 to 500 maybe. At some of the labs that we have here, it's around about there. Whereas in Japan, actually, sorry, I do know Japan. I think Japan has a reference range that's a lot higher than that. Okay, they go up to, I think it's about 800. Okay. So their minimum, I think, is actually 500. Yeah. So they have a different set of data that they're obviously using to arrive at those reference ranges. But nonetheless, B12 is involved in the methionine pathway, which is this helps us with our methylation. Okay, it works together with folate, which is readily abundant in plants, but unfortunately, you need to use them together. Okay, they need to be used at the same time, meaning if you're deficient in B12, then the folate can't contribute its action towards this methionine cycle. Okay, and basically this cycle takes homocysteine and recycles it back into methionine, that dietary amino acid that we talked about before, to make one of our main methyl donors, SAMe, which then goes off and helps us either turn genes off and on, make things, so synthesizing creatine and phospholipids such as phosphatidylcholine, which we use for things like our myelin sheathing, which has got things to do with our bile. Choline's also very important, just generally speaking, for acetylcholine, with our neurotransmitters. But anyway, so methylation can do that. Methylation can also help us either metabolize or eliminate other things as well. So very important with dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, estrogen, all that kind of jazz. Okay, so I know the listeners they're all interested in those facets of how this works. Okay. Now, when we use that up, basically the end product, or one of the intermediates, I should say, from using up this SAMe to go do those things, okay, is that we end up with this homocysteine. And this is an area where it either needs to be recycled back into methionine or it needs to be eliminated out of the body, because high homocysteine levels in circulating through the body is going to be very damaging on endothelial tissue and the heart, the cardiovascular system, basically. It's an independent risk marker for cardiovascular outcomes, okay? So that's how it's important, okay? And this gives you some context as to why we'd like to see it done more easily with clients and individuals. Vegans and vegetarians are notoriously a little bit higher in homocysteine, okay? Because they don't have the B12, the pathway gets jammed up, and we end up with this elevation in homocysteine. That puts more pressure on other nutrients to come in and try and figure out how the hell are we going to lower this homocysteine. The big ones are choline and betaine. Okay. Choline, think eggs and liver. So unfortunately, we're not talking about plant-based food. This lends itself to potential supplementation with forms of choline or consuming lecithin in the diet if you're plant-based. There's an alternative. You can supplement directly with betaine or trimethylglycine, because the choline gets converted into betaine to actually remethylate that homocysteine. Or you could consume wheat or wheat germ in the diet to get that betaine directly. Okay, but let's say you don't do any of that. Okay, so then you've got high homocysteine. We're going to end up with it basically causing oxidative stress, so it rusting kind of bits of the heart and the cardiovascular system. Okay, and that's bad. So that gives you context towards vegan and vegetarian diets, or just anyone. Omnivores who are deficient in B12 or folate, or some of the other main players in here, such as choline, B6, and zinc. Okay. Now, Let's flip it for a second, just talk about muscle heads.
Yeah.
Okay, so really high protein diets, really high methionine diets.
Yeah.
So their methylation side of it initially is working quite well because we've got heaps of the building block to do it all, which is the methionine. But in the process, you're going to end up with just as much homocysteine. So, and you're probably having no issues getting the B12, okay, because you're eating red meat, okay, let's say, for instance. But maybe you're not consuming a lot of folate. Maybe you're not having the liver. Maybe you're not eating any greens. Maybe you're a carnivore, okay? So let's just get a context. These are the things that people don't understand that they're inherently doing by cutting off some of this diversity, okay? So they're just a few contexts in which measuring homocysteine could be a valuable lab marker to just see where you sit. So if anyone was going to engage in a vegan diet, I would really want to see where their starting homocysteine is.
Yeah.
Okay, because we've seen, compared to omnivores, higher homocysteine in vegetarians and then higher again in vegans. Yeah. So imagine you're right up there. You go a vegan diet. You haven't done your homework.
Skyrockets.
That's right. Okay, we could end up with real problems there. Okay, so hopefully I explained that well enough. That's kind of more of a whiteboard session, so I apologise. But as to why it's a nice marker. Yeah. Okay. In terms of reference ranges, I know for some of the labs we have here, you might see like under 15. That's just a common kind of thing I'll see on reference ranges here, and it is obviously that's a wide reference range, most physicians that admit that they don't know what they would do wouldn't really know. If it was under 15 and they interpret it, they might go, okay, it's a tick. Yeah. I think we see that a lot on lab tests from the doctors, just tick, and sort of go from there. But if you speak to certain practitioners that do testing of homocysteine with reason and perhaps have a bit more of a know-how, they might have smaller reference ranges. Yeah. Okay, so I know some of the people I've mentored with over the years, they've suggested anywhere between sort of about 5 and 8 is generally speaking where they like to see it. Yeah. I know some of your mentors have sort of said lower again. Yeah, okay, and I think you can make an argument either way. It really just depends on context. So again, one of the reasons I would say maybe we don't want to get homocysteine too low is that elimination pathway that I mentioned before is the way that we synthesize a lot of things. So homocysteine is actually the starting building block of our cysteine, another amino acid, okay, which is the rate limiting amino acid in our glutathione production. Okay, so glutathione being a intracellular antioxidant, being part of our detoxification processes, one of the very heavily relied upon for heavy metal toxicities and a lot of other things in the body as well. So if we were to limit homocysteine, are we going to see a downstream problem? Yeah. That's the caveat here to how low you're going to go. Yeah. Okay, is there a downstream problem? Yeah. Additionally, okay, we even just taking the sulfur, so homocysteine, methionine, taurine, they're all sulfur-containing amino acids. We actually take the sulfur from that and create a compound with a very long name, but shorthand is PAPS, and that is what we use in sulfation reactions. And sulfation is another way that we metabolize or eliminate things out of the body too. Yeah. Okay. And a third reason for needing homocysteine is, again, synthesis into cysteine and then creating taurine. Yeah. Okay, and taurine very important for the heart and as an osmolyte and those kind of things as well. So
it's about balance.
Well, that's right. Do you know what I mean?
With any hormones or any markers.
Exactly. And I know you wanted to talk about this because I think we were dying between sets. We mentioned something along the lines really, like, what have we got going on with the other lab markers? Yeah. Okay, so because if we know that homocysteine is out of range and high, then we're going to be concerned with this oxidative stress and inflammation. But are we backing that up with like a acute elevation in C-reactive protein as well? Are we seeing that? Are we seeing elevated ferritin levels, our sort of storage of iron very high too? Yeah. Because then, iron is very oxidizing, so in very high amounts, which we do see in certain parts of the population, whether we've got issues with the transporters into the gut and we take up too much iron, whether we're eating too much iron fortified food, the body doesn't really, especially with males, doesn't have a great way of eliminating iron out. So that can contribute to part of the problem, and it's all about the context.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we saw a pattern, of those lab markers, then we could take even more consideration with what we think about homocysteine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, going along the lines of iron, so how, that's obviously one thing we've definitely seen a lot of fitness enthusiasts, bodybuilders, powerlifters per se, eating a lot of red meat, being that their sole protein source.
Yeah.
What are other things that they should consider having in their diet to help balance out that iron in that process? Like obviously things like vitamin A and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, okay, let me set the scene here, because I literally just put out something trying to get people to stop demonizing iron, because iron is really important, obviously, for our energy metabolism and our synthesis of it's a very important mineral. But
balance again.
That's right. So 30% of the population are going to be predisposed potentially to a genetic variation which allows them to uptake more iron than the rest of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, iron is regulated at the absorption process. Okay, so unlike some other things where maybe we let it in from the gut and into the body, and then we go, "Ooh, okay, we've got a bit too much of this. Like, we'll get it out. We don't have any problems with that excretion part, side of things."
Yeah.
So the elimination side of things. Iron isn't really one of them. Okay, so that regulation really does have to be done for the most part at the level of absorption. What do we see, though? We see a lot of gastrointestinal issues, that may contribute to that part of the body, not functioning properly.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we have inflammation or, things going on down there that could lead to suboptimal situation, we get a higher iron content into the body.
Yeah.
So what does the body have to do? It's going to have to generate more ferritin. It's going to have to try and capture that. Females that are menstruating, obviously, they have a way with blood loss of eliminating that iron down. I know with a lot of male clients that I work with, it's a case of getting to go to a physician and getting a phlebotomy.
Yeah.
Okay, that is one of the easiest ways to get them under the care of a physician who can do this in a, if needed, regular fashion to ensure that iron status is kept within acceptable ranges.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the other things that will, to a certain degree, manage iron absorption is the level of anti-nutrients that are within the diet.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are certain compounds within plants that basically inhibit the absorption of various things such as minerals within our body. Okay, so if we had more phytates, coming from things like legumes, nuts, seeds, grains, then we're going to inhibit or slow down that absorption of the iron and kind of just excrete it in the poo. Okay, so it doesn't really got into the body. Now, to what degree you can manage that, again, it's a layer of complexity, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, far out, we could attempt to do it, but again, maybe then we're going to run into issues with absorption of calcium.
Yeah.
Okay, because these compounds that give you that method of trying to slow down the absorption of the iron, they're also going to interfere with the absorption of other things.
Yep.
Zinc, calcium. A lot of these things we're also seeing suboptimal nutrient status in clients. Okay? So, just a few things to be aware of.
Yeah, cool. All right.
You happy now?
Yeah.
You happy we got it done?
Yeah, we got a deep dive. It's good. Give people some
Mate,
more
you got your
information.
triceps swole, your delts swole, you got American barbecue, and you got a Homocysteine podcast.
Beautiful.
What a day.
Great day. You just need to finish it off with all you can eat sushi.
All I can eat is sushi. And a nice Japanese whiskey.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have whiskey on the podcast. Sorry, we'll do it on tomorrow's.
No, that's good. That's
Cool.
good. I think there's some good information there for people to take away. Obviously, some of those pathways there might be a bit complex and over people's heads, but at least
not to swing anyone directly to my social media, but I will because I literally just did put up I think it was a 10-minute IGTV video running through this. It is I think the title of it might have been something along the lines of supplementation that might be warranted for consideration for a vegan diet. But the video is on a whiteboard, and I do run through this pathway with specific reference to like some of the nutrients that you can look at. You don't have to be vegan. That's a very, hopefully, useful video for meat eaters or omnivores as well.
And like, even though that stuff's a bit complex, what people need to need to grasp the whole situation of it is that it's more than just hitting your macros, number one. You need to get a good variety of food. You can't just cut out food groups unless you've obviously got a legit intolerance. You know what I mean? Just try and then get your food knowledge up. It's not just looking at what's in your food.
That's exactly
and
right.
then just don't eat just chicken or just beef. Get some seafood in there. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're an athlete that's using anabolics, you know what I mean? That iron increase is then going to be amplified significantly. Again, homocysteine, another thing we see with homocysteine, people using trenbolone, it skyrockets. I mean, and people always allude to that trenbolone is hard on the cardiovascular system. That's a good indicator that it's wreaking havoc on the cardiovascular system. So it's obviously something else to consider when you're looking at your diet, especially when you're doing those things. What can I do nutritionally to start to combat some of these issues that are going to arise? You know, am I eating a lot of iron? I've seen a lot of people trying to use white bread or iron fortified cereals to pump their carb content up. They use an anabolic and they end up with an iron issue, and they're going to go and get a phlebotomy. And it's like, well, you need to make a better, smarter choices. Look at what's in that food and go, okay, this is fortified with iron. Maybe I need to have a minimal amount of it. Maybe I need to look for a different source.
I mean,
food.
It horrifies me to think that there's so many anabolics users out there that aren't doing blood work. Like, you know, just with what we know and what we see, I just really encourage anyone, if that's what you're doing, you've got to go and like manage this. Because, you know, as with any drug, the potential for things to go haywire, you know, it excels rapidly, with dose and duration and, you know, whatever you're using. So, absolutely should be working with someone and checking on this stuff regularly.
A lot of people just don't respect that it's actually going to do something, and what you put in your mouth is going to be amplified, because that's what those drugs do. They amplify stuff. It amplifies it in a positive way, but also amplify it in a negative way. So you've got to cover all these bases and think about these things in your whole encompassing plan if you want to be, obviously, if you don't want to die early.
100%. And look, it comes back to, exactly what we said about just, if you're going to do something, be ready to do the homework necessary to do it. Do you know what I mean? Don't be lazy. So.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. This was insightful.
Thanks for having me.
Anything you want to plug?
No, just...
Benny Lifts.
Just follow Benny Lifts. Eat more oysters, eat more sardines. It's been really enjoyable. I love being on the last one, and this one's been good as well. So,
Thanks for a killer session today. I'm still feeling swole.
I know.
Got to out-angle you in the photo.
Yeah, I'm about to post that photo, and I'm pretty sure you do.
All right, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, Koji.
See you guys later.
Awesome.